So today we will be taking a look at the introduction to Android development. So what are the things that we will be taking a look at today? So today we will be taking a look at the Android overview. So I would be taking you through the Android overview. So what is an Android and who has created the Android and what is the system stack of the Android platform. Then we will be taking a look at Android version history. So what are the versions available in the market? Then we will deep diving into the Android architecture. So here we will be taking a look at the Android platform architecture. So how it is organized. Okay, so we would be starting with the Android overview. So in a simple words, what is an Android? So I still remember when I started developing the applications for Android back in 2010. So that time Android was pretty new. So I would say many of the people, they were more of them were using the iPhone or they were using the Nokia. Very few people used to use Android device. But nowadays the world is completely different. Now you will find that most of the people are using the Android devices. So as we all know, Android is designed for the touchscreen mobile devices such as smartphone and tablet. So you would find that the Android operating system is present mostly on the mobile devices which you use on daily basis. So Android has been developed by the Android Inc. So if you don't know, so Android was originally developed by the Andy Rubin. So he was the author of the Android and he developed the Android and he created an organization that is called as Android Inc. But later Google saw the potential in that organization and they acquired that particular organization and they made Andy Rubin as a VP, Vice President of the Android development team. So now the Google maintains all the things about the Android. They are responsible for launching the newer versions of Android. They are responsible for maintaining the Android operating system in the market. And Android is popular with the technology companies which require really made low cost and customizable operating system. So that is the biggest advantage of Android operating system. Android is an open source operating system, as we all know, and you can just customize the Android system. Because it is open source, you can just take the source code of the Android and you can customize it according to your own need. And you can also, if you are a hardware company, let's say like Samsung or the Sony, you can create your own branded mobiles and you can put Android on those mobiles. So certainly you will have to take approval from the Google for that, but that is pretty much possible. So you can come up with your own organization and you can put the Android on your own devices. One more advantage of using Android or learning Android is you can create wide variety of applications for the Android. You can create the games, you can create the application, you can create the quiz applications and a lot of things. So there are a lot of possibilities nowadays. You can create the applications for the Google Glass, you can create the applications for the Google Smartwatch and a lot of things you can do with the Android platform. So the things that we would be learning during the session, you would be able to develop the applications for the Android mobile. But certainly that knowledge will help you to create the applications for Google Glass or the Google Smartwatch also. Because behind the scene, the concept are pretty much same. So you would find that the 60% of the coding is same for all, but only 40% of the wrapper, it will change. So for the Google Smartwatch, you will have somewhat different widgets. For the Google Glass, you will have a different widgets, and for the mobile, you will have a different widgets over there. And as I said, Android is a mobile operating system developed by the Google. Okay. And I got a question from Aman. So what are the advantage of learning Android? So Aman, as I said, if you learn the Android, you have got ample amount of opportunities. You can work for an organization as a mobile developer, or also you can work as a freelancer. So the advantage of using or learning Android development is I can sit at home and I can create my own applications and I can upload them on the market. So you can get the subscription to the Google Play Store. It is just $25 a year. So it is pretty much cheap, I would say. So $25 for a year and you can submit as many applications as you want. So that's a really advantage. So you can create the games, you can create the utility application and you can publish them on the Google Play Store without paying any extra amount, basically. Okay. And I have got a question from Rohan. How will I do the practicals? So Rohan, so in fact, this is applicable to all of you guys. So what I would encourage you to do is during the session, try not to practice the program which I am teaching you, because the speed at which you will be creating the typing the programs and speed at which I will be typing the programs, it would vary and you may miss some important points. So what you can do is you can just concentrate on the session, and once the session is over, you can start practicing those programs and also start practicing the assignment programs which I have given you. And at any moment, if you find any difficulty, you can always have a look at the recorded session and you can clarify the doubts. So we were on the introduction to the Android screen. So that was the introduction to the Android platform. So the important concepts that we have to remember is Android has been developed by the Google. Android is the open source, and Android can be customized according to your own needs. Okay. So as I said, Android is an open source and the base of the Android is the Linux. So I have got a question from Shanti. Will we be doing only standalone apps, or we will cover the client server app also? So Shanti, we would also cover the client server application. So if you just go through the syllabus, so we have got the module where we would during that session, for that 3-hour session, we would be entirely that 3-hour session we would be devoting to create the client server application. So we would be having a server, we would be having a client app, and which will communicate with the server basically. So yes, we would be covering those concepts. Yeah. So the Android is an open source, and the very important thing is the base of the Android is the Linux. So Android has been developed on the top of the Linux. So that's why it is also a very secure platform. And Linux is very famous for its speed, its security, and all those advantages you get in the Android. Android application runs in the sandbox. So what is meant by sandbox? So sandbox are like your own private areas. So let's say we are working in organization. So let's say there are 10 people working in the organization, and those all 10 people, they have got their own cabins. So they are working in their own cabin. So in that way, what happens? One person will not get disturbed by the other person because they are working isolatedly, right? So same way, Android application also run in the separate sandbox, so that one application it cannot have any effect on the other application. So whatever things that application will be doing, whatever files that application will be using, that only will seen by that application. Other applications cannot have a look at those files basically. As I said, the Android applications runs in the sandbox. So one application performance is not affected by the other application, and they will always work in the isolated manner. So the system resources and all the things which are used by the individual application, they are only seen by them. No other applications can see those resources. So there comes the security basically. Okay, so these are the different Android versions which are present in the market. Okay, so I have got a very good question from Rimi. So using Android, can we make mobile version of web-based application, or is it just a standalone apps that can be made using Android? So that's a really good topic. So basically using Android, so if you have learned Android, you can transform existing website into the Android applications basically. So you would require the visual designers, you would require the user experience designer who will transform that website into the mobile application. They will draw the screens, and you can develop the applications on top of that. So it is always recommended that you should create the native applications, because the native applications has got a better speed as compared to the web-based application. So there are the technologies in market like PhoneGap or Corona SDK, using which you can create the cross-platform applications. But I would say they suffer from the performance. So if you are very tight on your budget, and if you want to create applications for all the platforms with minimum amount of time as well as money, you can always go for the cross-platform development. But if you develop those same applications in the native way, the application performance would be much better as compared to the hybrid applications. And it is the part of the course. So creating the native applications is the part of the course. So we would be learning how you can create the native application. And I got a question from Vivek. What is the native application? So Vivek, native application means the applications which we would be creating in Java and all. And cross-platform application, you always create them in HTML programming. So this course in this course, we would see how you can create the applications in the native programming language. That is the Java programming language, which is native to the Android device. Yeah. So I hope many of you must be using the Android devices, and many of you must be knowing all these versions. So Android started with 1.5, that is called as the Cupcake. So the Cupcake was launched in 2008. So it was the very first version of Android, and then Android is slowly progressing. So the latest version of Android that is available in market, it is called as the 5.0. So it is the Lollipop version that is available in market. Okay, so we have this course which is completely updated for the Lollipop version. So we would be also learning few of the widgets which are newly introduced in the Lollipop release. Okay, so I would say nowadays the whatever applications that we develop, so we keep the minimum requirement as 4.0. So you would not be developing the applications from 1.5 to 2.3 because now those are obsolete. Now you would not find devices in the market who are running starting version 1.5 to 2.3. So nowadays all the mobiles you would see, they are running either 4.0 or the above versions. So we would also creating the applications for those platforms basically. I got a question from Mike. After completing this course, will I be able to create an application based on the database taken from online? So yes, Mike, absolutely, you will create that. So I would also teach you guys how you can create an application which will work with the on-device database, and also how you can create an application based on the server which has got the built-in database on the server side. So absolutely, we would be learning that. If we develop any applications in Android, is there any way to develop the same app in the iOS without having knowledge of Objective-C? So Syed, so you cannot do so, because if you want to develop the application for the iOS, you would need at least the basic understanding of Objective-C or the Swift. Or you can go for the cross-platform application development, which are done in the HTML programming, basically. Yeah, so these are the versions from the Android which are available in market. So whenever you create a new project in Android Studio, there you will see the cumulative distribution. So as you can see over here, so Android 4.0 has got cumulative distribution of 90.4%. So you can see maximum number of people are using Android 4.0 and above. So that's the reason while creating an application, we would always target for Android version 4.0 and above, because by that way we would be targeting maximum amount of the users basically. Okay, so I got a request from Mike. Can you please explain the cross-platform application a bit more? So guys, in a simple words, so I also haven't worked on the cross-platform application development much, but what I know is the cross-platform application development is something like you can have a single code base and you can create so if you can compile that code for all the devices. Like I can have a simple game, so I will have an option: compile this code for the Android, compile this code for the iOS, compile this code for the Windows Phone. So ultimately what it is doing, it will transform that code in a such a way that it will run on those respective platforms. So if you get a chance, have a look at the PhoneGap application development. There they must have explained you how you can create the applications and how you can compile those applications for the different platform. So again, as I said, those applications suffer from the performance. So basically we don't prefer using the PhoneGap tools, but if you want to create very simple applications or very simple games, you can always take a look at the PhoneGap application development, which helps you to create the cross-platform applications. I got a question from Abhi. What is a built-in database? So Abhi, the built-in database is nothing but the database which resides on the client side, which you will, that database will be local to your application, which will be present on your device. So that is called as the built-in database. Okay. So I got a question from Vinayak. Why the minimum SDK version is necessary? So guys, the minimum SDK version is necessary because when you are developing an application, you have to take care of all the platforms which are available. So to give you a simple example, let's say you are creating an application and that application can be, so let's take an example of desktop application development. So we have got Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10. So you all know whatever features that are available on Windows 7, those features are not available on Windows XP. Like you cannot create transparent windows or something like that. So if I create an application and if I write the code snippet to create the transparent screen, so that application will run on Windows 7 perfectly. But if you try to run that application on Windows XP, that application will crash. Why it will crash? Because it would not able to find out the APIs on Windows XP because they are not present over there. So to make that application compatible with older version, I will have to write the if-else conditions. So I would check if the host operating system is greater than Windows XP, or if it is Windows 7, then use this code snippet. Else, use some other code snippet, or don't use that particular code snippet, something like that. So that's why we always try to target the least number of older devices. So that's why we are targeting 4.0 and above. If you try to target 2.3 and above, then you will have to write plenty of code to support each and every version. And it doesn't make any sense. Why? Because only 9% of the people worldwide, they are using 2.3 and above. So 99, or I would say 91% of the people are using 4.0 and above. So the lower the headache of supporting the older platform, the highest the quality of the code you will have, basically. So it is a standard now. So Google only suggests us the standard. So as per the Google, whatever applications that you will develop now, you should always target for 4.0 and the above version. You should not target for the below versions. Because you can target, you can create the applications, but there are no lot of users present in the world who would be using those applications on the older devices. So that's the reason. I got a question from Vivek. What is the API means? So Vivek, API means application programming interface. So API contains all the list of libraries and all which you would be using for creating the Android applications. Okay, so this is the Android version history which you will see while creating an application. So shortly, I would be starting the Android Studio and I will be showing you this particular screen. So whenever you will start creating a new project, you would get that particular screen over there. Okay, so it's a question time. So can you tell me what is the primary language that we would be using for creating the Android application? You can answer me in the question answer panel or in the question panel. So yes, all of you are perfect. So basically the language that we would be using for creating the Android application is the Java language. So that's a really correct answer. Okay, so next question is Android is open source or closed source? Can you tell me over the chat window? Exactly. So Android is an open source operating system. So what is meant by open source operating system? It means that you will have access to the source code and all. And basically you can just go through the platform source code and you can create your own operating system also based on the Android. So next question is what are all target platforms on which Android runs? So I would say Android can be run on the mobiles. It can run on the tablets, Google Glass, Google Smartwatch. Now Google has also released the Android version for the autos. So whatever four-wheelers you will have, you will find out the equipments that are available in those four-wheelers. They are running the Android version. So basically now Android is spreading to all the technologies, I would say. So when I started with Android in 2010, it was just limited to the mobiles. But now Android has came into a lot of things. So what is an auto? So Nola, auto means the vehicle, four-wheeler. So if you see the music system in the four-wheeler, or if you see the GPS system in four-wheeler, so previously we used to have those systems which were coded in the J2ME. But now you would see that Android operating system present in those hardware also. So music system, you will have touch-based music system which will be running the Android version basically. Okay, so the runtime, that is, yeah. So we were talking about the Android architecture. So as I said, before starting developing the applications for the Android, we should be pretty much comfortable with the Android architecture. We should be knowing what is present inside the app architecture, right? So it is similar to like how the human body behaves or how the human body works. So we are always curious. So when we were kids, we were always curious to know what is happening inside. So in the same way, when you start learning the Android platform, we are always curious to know so how it takes place inside. So Android is not a small platform. Android is a big platform and it has got a different layers. So very on the top, you will have the application layer. So application layer will contain all the applications basically. So you will be having the different applications in the application layer, like home application, contact application, phone application, browser application. So basically, as a fresher, I would say, or when you will newly join any Android team, you will be working in the application layer. You would be creating different types of applications. Once you gain the experience creating the Android applications, like say down the line after 5 years, you can choose to work on the application, or you can choose to work on the application framework. So what is the framework is? So what is a framework? So a very simple example I would like to give. So let's say if you want to create the dialog in Android, so we use the alert dialog class. So alert dialog class is used for creating the dialogs in Android. So we will just import that alert dialog and we would be showing the dialog to the user. But that alert dialog is also created by somebody, right? So it has been created by the Google engineers. So they have written some implementation that if you call the alert dialog, it should create a pop-up window. It should fade out the contents which are present below it. So all that implementation. So that implementation is a part of the application framework. So it contains set of the libraries which you would be using on the daily basis to create the Android applications. So I have seen that as an experienced developer, you would always work on the application framework because you have got plenty of experience. So you would no longer create the Android applications. You will also work on the application framework where you will create your own libraries to support the day-to-day tasks which you are doing. So that is the application framework. Then you will have some libraries. So basically what happens is the application framework that you create, ultimately they are intended to communicate with the Linux kernel. So very simple example I would take. Let's say you want to create a library which helps user to capture the photograph. So he would be using your library to launch the camera and capture the photograph. So ultimately what your library is doing, your library is calling the Android camera hardware. So it is giving the instructions to the hardware to just open up the camera and start capturing the picture. So what happens is the application framework communicates with the Linux kernel through the C libraries which are present at the very bottom level. So I would say those are the embedded libraries which are present at the very bottom. Those directly communicates with the Linux hardware. So as a Java Android developer, we would not be working on the libraries. But if you have got some experience in embedded systems or something like that, you can always work on that green layer, which is called as the embedded layer. So it goes sequentially. Your application communicates with the application framework. Your application framework communicates with the embedded libraries. And finally, your libraries, embedded libraries, they gives the instruction to the Linux kernel over there. So that way communication happens. So as a beginner in the Android development, we would not be much worrying about the lower three parts, that is framework, libraries and Linux kernel. We would just use the APIs which are available and we would be creating our applications. Okay, so the libraries. So Abhi, yes, I would certainly go into more of a libraries. So what I would do is rather than going into theoretical topic, when we will start creating the application, I would point out to you to the different libraries. So there would be a session where we would be using the SQLite library. There would be a session when we will be using the media library to create the MP3 music and video applications. So I would say that each content or each code snippet, it is present on the different library. So we would be having a database example which would communicate with the database library. We would be having the audio example which will communicate with the audio library. We would be having the networking example which would communicate with the networking library. So something like that. So in a simple words, libraries are like a set of built-in code snippets, built-in application programming interface, which you would be using on daily basis to create your own applications. Okay, so the runtime that we use in Android, it is called as the Dalvik virtual machine. So many of you must have worked on the Java or have at least heard about the Java programming. So you must be knowing in the Java, the runtime that we use, it is called as the Java virtual machine. So in the same way, so that is also called as JVM. So in the same way in Android, the runtime that we have got, it is called as the Dalvik runtime. Okay, so what is the runtime that is present on Android? That is called as the Dalvik and ART. So ART is the new runtime which has been introduced in Android 4.0. So previously we used to use Dalvik, but now it has been replaced by the ART. So it is just a runtime which is responsible for converting your code in the executable, which can run on the device.